So, the new Powerpuff Girls, huh? That sure exists.
It sure does. Well, I think we're done here. Let's go.
Yeah, bye. Bye forever. No. Okay, so there actually wouldn't be so much to discuss about new PPG, other than the fact that it's an underwhelming, somewhat subpar experience than the one it was overly hyped in the 1 year and a half it was announced. If I had to summarize it in a serious and professional manner, I'd say that at best the show feels like it's producing average episodes, that is, average in comparison to an average episode of the good run of the show. And at its worst, it's an average episode of the bad run of the show, the original show. The last 2 seasons, that is, where things were so rottening to the point that they became living corpses, so to speak. I'd say that the original series peaked by the time the film came out, the Powerpuff Girls movie, and after that it was a consistent creative bankruptcy throughout the remaining 2 seasons. So this new season pretty much has the unfortunate duty to pick up the slack of those last 2 not good seasons, and immediately kind of fails by being excruciatingly dull for the most part. And there are some episodes that are a bit more funny, and they do have at least some sort of tonal consistency, capturing somewhat the spirit of some of the episodes of the original show. And, well, at least it's not Teen Titans Go, it's not a complete parody, but it's mostly comedic and it lacks substantial, serious and dramatic moments, which is one of those elements that made the original show shine.
Yeah.
Now, that would be the serious summarization that I had about this show.
Yes.
Now, here's the wacky summarization for the new Powerpuff Girls. Man boy! Oh, remember the time where men were men and boys were men? Beard, muscles, manly!
Yeah, that was really the closest for me where it actually felt like the original Powerpuff Girls. Just like insane villains coming in and the girls are like oh my
boy! It's definitely a great villain for a one-off episode.
Yeah.
I definitely would not welcome him were he to come back. But for one episode only, it was perfectly serviceable. And besides, the reason why I like that episode, which is the one that decided to start this new round of the show, not with an, I don't know, epic reunion with all the epic villains and, you know, stopping Mojo Jojo from... Why have we not have a Mojo Jojo-centric episode yet?
Yeah, it's kind of stupid because it's basically my biggest issue with this whole series is that it's sort of like the target audience is trying to mix between the old audience and the new audience, and it's like they're framing the whole episodes like oh, we're supposed to know it. We're the Powerpuff Girls from our childhood.
Well, to be fair, they've been advertising this show so much and showcasing many presentation shorts even before this new show started that both ideally both new and old audiences should be familiar with what these characters are all supposed to be about, even before the show started. So that's not the problem that I have with this course of action. Now, the last 2 seasons made the mistake of having way too much Mojo Jojo to go around, to the point that his funny, redundant talking became his only characteristic, and he became flanderized like everyone else. And we had way too much of it. So the fact that they are trying to have less Mojo Jojo in this new series and more of everything and everyone else is a step in the right direction. Unfortunately, those one-off villains tasked to replace Mojo Jojo and him and all of the others which are yet to make an appearance are not really good.
Well, for me, that's kind of like more of an aesthetic sort of problem. Like we're bringing all these like much more like low key sort of villains. Like what I was saying before is like with the mixture of the old fans and new fans. Like of course, like we're supposed to understand it between the advertisements. But when you're developing a show, you're supposed to basically have your pilot episode be basically like, here's the introduction to everybody. But basically, the first episode's like here you know them, like this is what they do. This is what
You
the
know,
mayor does. Eat pickles and all that sort of stuff.
you know, Sonic Boom was much, much worse in that regard. You know, at the very least, the
Yeah.
Powerpuff Girls have been advertised and hyped, and we had pre-show shorts presenting the characters, so we did not go in completely blind, so to
Yeah.
speak, both the new and older audiences. Sonic Boom, on the other hand, it just throws you into an episode that feels like it should be in the middle of the season, as opposed to the episode to start with, thus
Yeah.
completely botching the very introduction of that world, stories, and characters. Sonic Boom is trash, but, you know, at the very least, it can be occasionally really funny. I cannot say the same for PPG. Then again, we have only had 7 episodes so far, but it's the Bunnicula complaint all over again in that regard. 7 episodes in, 6 episodes in, what have you, and we're yet to see something really memorable from this show. In fact, we even went through one horrible, horrible episode before going back to the mediocrity that this show is so far. That said, the reason why I really like the first episode is because the very idea of of man boy, you know, this essentially a literal man-child with really skewed, really misguided ideas of masculinity coming to crash a party full of self-entitled hippies feels like a metaphor for whenever 4chan invades Tumblr.
Well, it is a pretty good episode. But actually, with the episode listing, that's actually episode number 7. Like I watched them sequentially. The first episode is it's the Monster Island episode. Like
That's funny because I believe that episode was broadcast before everyone else.
yeah.
What's going on? They aren't really caring much about this show, are they?
Yeah, that's just sort of the major issue. Like, there is no, like, little pilot episode for the new Powerpuff Girls. Like, oh, we got a bunch of these episodes. That could be any episode. Let's throw a random one on.
Yeah, that's pretty much the tone it's going for, which, to be fair, the original show was much like this. If you think
Yeah.
about it, the first episode of the original round the show really throws you into the mix without properly establishing world and characters. With that said, really good episodes were not far away from coming, and they would be the ones to properly establish characters and worlds. We are yet to see that here, but honestly, I'm kind of losing hope after episode 5, because that episode feels like the kind of episode you'd see the last 2 seasons trying to pull. or a particularly bad episode from the good run, because even the original good run of the show did have some issues when it came to tackling more problematic topics on occasion.
Yeah. And the original show had a much like better understanding of like actual flow of everything. Like in the new show, it's basically like the same problem with a lot of other kid shows nowadays. Like everything has to be fast and random and all that because kids just can only listen to that sort of
I don't know, you can perfectly tell a story in 11 minutes if you have a consistent sense of pacing and you're a good writer. This show does not have any of those, so
it basically just like speeds through each story. It's like, oh my god, yes. And then it wasn't until like the 3rd episode they finally brought back that whole like rainbow heart thing in the background. It's like, today was say thanks to the Powerpuff Girls. But he throw in a little funny scene. He's like, oh my god, look, it's different this time. Oh no, it's different the next time too.
Which is too bad because, you know, the animated opening, the new animated opening for this show is all kinds of great. It really makes you you know, it really makes you expect something great to follow that opening. You know, who's got the power? We got the power.
Yeah.
It's great. It's well animated. It's well scored. Great sense of pacing. Short and sweet. Memorable. All kinds of memorables, so to speak.
I sort of got the negative aspect of that. I'm sort of like, oh, yep, it's going way too fast to basically actually make us like appreciate each sort of shot of it. That's gonna be the problem of the show. It's not gonna be able to. It's not gonna be able to hold on a certain scene. Basically, have us enjoy the joke, enjoy the characters, and all that.
No, I would argue the biggest problem of the show is that it looks really cheap. Especially compared to the animated opening. That's clearly where all the budget went to.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's very well animated. Like the show looks,
meh.
It looks plain. Yeah, it looks plain.
It looks plain and boring, and the line art is lazy, and the animation is, honestly, it feels like the animation is not only has a really small budget, but at some point they're even reusing shots. Am I wrong?
Yeah.
Damn you, dog!
Yeah. The dog agrees. The dog agrees with you.
Speaking of dogs, I am yet to see the talking dog in this show.
No, that little dog that just goes around.
So okay, so
I would think they would bring him back or something like that because it's supposed to be a callback to the fans and all that.
Yes, I mean they went through the trouble of recycling the original look of the show, at least how the characters look. Aesthetically speaking, it really pays homage to the original style. It doesn't look as good, but at the very least, it's loyal to the iconic aesthetics of the original show. If they went through the trouble of reproposing these original visuals,
we would just watch the original show, basically.
No, I mean, you'd think they would go through the trouble of actually, you know, reproposing all the other characters and all the other situations from the original. I mean, this is one of those situations in which you either, what's the term I'm looking for? You either go far or go home. You cannot stop at the middle of your track and then just stand there awkwardly. You have to arrive to the finish line. So either you do something that's completely aesthetically and visually and narratively loyal to the original show, or you do something that looks and feels completely different, which I would welcome at this point. At least it will be an interpretation. It must not be the Powerpuff Girls Z, though.
Yeah.
That's too different.
Powerpuff Girls is weird. Z is weird. Like, I watched the entire show and that's like, why was it this? Why was it this? Why is Blossom's bow a freaking boomerang?
Why are they using toys instead of their fists? Why are they magical girls now? That goes against everything I know and love.
Well, they were kind of always magical girls, just mutated girls in the first series.
They were more like superheroes that just happened to be girls. That's the whole point of
but
the
they're
message.
kind of mutants. They're kind of mutants with chemical X and all. They're kind of mutant little things.
What most superheroes are, essentially.
Yeah.
So, there you go.
So we agree they were always mutants.
Sure. I mean, have you seen a child looking like that in real life?
No.
I mean, who's got no thumbs and got the power? We do.
Yeah, they have the greatest games of rock, paper, scissors ever.
Oh yes, let's talk about the jokes, the recurring jokes in this show. Done. We're done talking about them.
Well, I thought the rock, paper, scissors joke was kind of funny. It's just a cute little thing.
Yeah, oh, what about that episode in which they everything turns into a video game parody? And it's an especially lazy video game parody too. I mean, again, it is one of those situations in which you either go far or go home.
Yeah.
That's the leitmotif with this show. Everything is half-baked and therefore dull. Except for one episode. Oh, they went far with that episode. far down to hell.
Which episode was that? Because from how we watched it, I think we got different episode lineups. Because I went from 1 to 7, you probably went from 1 to 7 in a different order.
Oh, this is worse than that time in which Fox tried to boycott and succeeded to boycott Firefly. You know, it broadcast episodes in a incorrect order, but that show was supposed to have an overarching narrative, so
Yeah. Yeah, at least this one's episodic, so it doesn't really matter how you put it out.
I think it would have been best for the new Powerpuff Girls to get on with the times and propose an overarching narrative rather than an episodic one. It would be new and it would be different, and that's pretty much the only thing that the original show never tried to do.
Yeah.
So that would have been great. But the more I see episodes from the show, the more I lose hope that this will be basically a slightly better version of Teen Titans Go, with better animation, which isn't saying much.
Yeah.
But not completely a self-parody, but not a really particularly solid show either. Basically the last 2 seasons of the original run. This was not needed. And you know what? Speaking of the visuals, let me rant about this for 45 minutes.
How about we cut it down to like maybe 5?
Yes. So, okay. So, like I said, they went into the trouble of recycling the original aesthetics. Except they look completely lazy and uninspired, ironically. Now, if you remember Dance Pants, the 2015 anniversary special, which is something that I notoriously despised. Well, it was supposed to be an anniversary. What do you do in an anniversary special? You homage and tributes everything that makes something great. Instead, they got a stupid asinine DDR parody that makes no sense. Also, I did not really care for the style it was going for. It was supposed to be CG with cel-shaded polygons, and yet the characters looked even more flat than their 2D counterparts, which is mesmerizing to me.
Oh yeah.
But at the very least, the show that anniversary special was going for a unique style. And I would have not been against this new show adopting something new of a style if he actually had the guts to do something completely new and different with the property. Because, let's face it, you will never make everyone happy. I mean, maybe you attract new audiences that like the show as it is, but the old ones, this is not what I remember. Or maybe you do the opposite. In which new audiences are completely lost, but the old ones are, oh, this is exactly the show, remember it, which is not a sound economic choice either way. Or maybe you end up doing what this show actually did, and that is dissatisfying everyone.
Yeah. It's not really dissatisfying, it's just more like leaving everyone with like a meh sort of thing. Except for that one episode where everyone's just like, oh my god, they finally did it! Oh, good thing for the LGBT community, yay!
Except they failed. So hard. Okay, at this point, this is a segue to talk about the episode that pretty much is going to be the title of this podcast, because we're going to talk primarily about that. Mostly because there isn't much to talk about this show as a whole up until now, other than the fact that it's boring, uninspired, dull, and not particularly funny.
Yeah, I do believe that it's getting better in the later half of the episode that I watched. Like the first 3 episodes, whatever, well, it's just doing its thing. Then 4 episodes, like, oh, finally, it's getting close to being like very bad version of Powerpuff Girls in the past.
Yes, well, unfortunately, I started up with the best episode, Man Up. Starring Man Boy, the manly boy who's a man who's a boy, beard, muscles, chainsaws, giant wooden robots.
Yeah, that he powers with his will, his manly will.
That was perfectly fine. And I like the fact that that episode seemed to be about, feminism versus chauvinism and all of that, but it also turns out to be red herring for the actual theme of the episode being Buttercup dealing with anger issues. Because I like to think that that episode was smart enough to acknowledge that hugely bearded, idiotic man-child calling somebody a girl, you're inferior, is one of those comments that really held no ground whatsoever, and you should just ignore because it's not worth the time of your day.
Yeah.
Which is great. But anyway, let's put that one good episode aside and let's talk about Horn, Sweet Horn. Or as I like to call it, the pony episode.
Yeah. I think that you probably hated it a lot more than I do, so why don't you start off?
Actually, here's the thing. The problem that this episode has, well, many of the problems, is that, Cartoon Network has a show, a little-known show called Steven Universe, that has been adopted by the LGBT community as their flagship, basically. The funny thing about the Steven Universe is that it was never meant to become that. It just naturally became an icon for the LGBT community, basically almost by accident, because it was a show that was organically, systematically built, this emotional ride that eventually ended up incorporating really progressive messages about, gender identities and relationships and what have you, without actually even trying, because it was always about the characters and their emotional journeys, and these characters just so happened to be what they were. Which is fantastic. It's a progressive message, and like I said, it became an icon for the LGBT community without actually trying to be. So, imagine Cartoon Network having this mindset, you know what, we are so totally progressive, aren't we? We are allowing Steven Universe to exist, and that show is beloved by everyone. Too much by some. So let's make this one episode, and let's completely advertise it as an episode that's specifically meant to talk about transgenderism. Which is the most idiotic and blatantly pandering thing they could do. This is Cartoon Network, basically. Hey, look! This is an episode about you, LGBT guys and gals! Watch it! Like it! It's great! It's for you!
Yeah.
Look at these reviews, these completely idiotic reviews that says this episode is progressive and transgressive. This episode is great, and it's exactly made for you.
Yeah.
Do you love it? Oh god! And then, why don't you like it? It's an episode about transgenderism. Why? Why don't you like it? And CN completely misses the point of why Steven Universe was successful. Obviously.
Yeah. I luckily missed out on all the advertisement and all that, so I watched the episode completely clean. So I didn't really get any of the transgender sort of underlying message. I just was trying to understand what the actual story was and what the actual moral was.
Yes. Here's the thing. I also watched the episode blind the first time around, and there is definitely something there about transgenderism, but let's pretend for a moment that CN didn't go out of its way to advertise it to the specific communities that this is an episode about them, which in turn enraged the whole of Tumblr when this episode turned out to be terribly misguided, to say the very least. But let's ignore that for a second and let's focus on the fact that this episode, transgender issues or not, it's a really pretty stupid freaking episode in its own right. I mean, from a script and storytelling standpoint, it's a complete nonsensical mess. I mean, just thinking about that dialogue exchange in between Blossom and Buttercup about colts and fillies is a colt, and then what's a filly? A colt with attitude. My brain shut down. My brain just shut down at that specific moment, and I was like that for the rest of the episode.
Yeah, I just sat there, I was like, what the fuck was funny about that?
And the best part is they think it's so funny, it becomes a running gag throughout the episode.
I was thinking, Is this a My Little Pony thing? Is that why they're
No.
just pushing on it?
Okay, here's the thing. If this were to be a My Little Pony parody, it's failing to be even that, because they clearly have no idea what they're talking about. Honestly, I think it's supposed to be a jab to a modern self-entitled feminism, because the girls were clearly the villains of this episode, even though they are not framed as villains, which was wrong. I think execution-wise, it comes off as the writers have realistically absolutely no idea what the difference between colts and fillies are, and they think the audience is as stupid as they are.
Yeah.
Because if you watch actually G4 My Little Pony, they use the terms colts and fillies all the time, and they just assume that the audience is smart enough to understand the difference.
Yeah.
So this is my middle finger to you, Orn Sweethorn, and your stupid, unfunny dialogues that make me want to puke rainbows, as it were.
All the rainbows.
But okay, so let's talk about this episode in the context of the gender issues that the Tumblr was not agreeable upon.
Well, if I'm going to talk about that, I was just basically, my initial reaction is like, oh, what is Tumblr so mad about this episode for? Then I look up all the articles, like, oh, everyone's praising it. It's like, oh, yes, transgender issues, like the first transgendered pony and all that sort of stuff. Like, oh, okay.
First of all...
And I never got that.
First of all, that's false. Because the very first transgender pony was in the actual G4 My Little Pony show. And will you look at that? It was a good episode.
Yeah.
Yes, because transgender issue was not even the actual theme of the episode. It just was there by accident. The theme of the episode was a big brother guy wanting to spend a day with little sister at an event that was only for sisters and not brothers. So he decided to basically masquerade himself as a woman, and which is a staple of cartoons since Bugs Bunny, I might add.
Yeah.
What was really simultaneously funny and also progressive about that episode is that everybody immediately recognized that Big Brother guy was dressed as a woman. His name was Big Macintosh, by the way.
Yeah.
But they just went along with it and did not bother him in the slightest, which was funny, but also denotes the fact that they are not the kind of people who would just out somebody because they think it's wrong.
Yeah.
Which is the opposite of what happens in this Powerpuff Girls episode. They out the poor pony immediately, and the reaction to that is viewed as purely comedic, which demonstrates the fact that CN does not have any intention to take the issue seriously.
Yeah, they basically just treat it as like, oh my god, you're kind of weird for thinking that, but let's put you in this machine and change you completely.
By the way, changing your identity, your gender identity is wrong. It turns you into a monster. But it's okay, because it turns out you were what you were pretending to be all along, so...
That completely defeats the purpose of the moral. Like, that's what this show really does. It, like, defeats its own moral. Like, that whole episode where Buttercup got friends.
Okay, but actually, we should go in order. We should go in order about this, because we've been rambling incoherently. So Bubbles wants to see a unicorn. That's the premise. But there is not such a thing as a unicorn. There is, but more on that later.
Yeah.
So
and she has this kazoo, and she toots on it, and then a horse comes out from the bushes. Like, oh my god!
Pony. It's a pony. It's a colt. It's a pony colt, not a filly. A filly colt.
I don't care. Let's go over it. Horse, whatever. Okay, a horse comes out of the bushes. Horse comes out of the bushes with a little like what was it? Like a paper tube on his head.
I thought it was a tree branch that looked like a horn.
No, I think it was a toilet paper roll or something like that, because that's what it looked like to me. And they took it off.
The important thing that the episode wants to point out as vehemently as possible is that it was not a real horn.
Yeah. It's like, you're wrong for trying to pretend.
So Buttercup comes in and she immediately does the worst thing anyone could do with a real-life transgender person. And that is to out them immediately by removing the prosthetic horn, which Which, if we are to take this episode in the context of this is totally about transgender, you guys, that CN wanted to push it for, this is the cartoon equivalent of basically removing the undergarments of an actual transgender person
pulling
in real life.
Transgender person pants down and just showing off what they're.
See, he has a dick.
Yeah, you're not a woman at all. You have to change yourself completely to, make myself feel better.
Okay, so Tumblr has the bad habit of taking things completely out of proportion and blowing them to the point that it becomes the online equivalent of the apocalypse. The sad part is that it's hard to be mad at them this time, because really, Cartoon Network completely enabled them the second they said this is an episode about gender issues, and a couple of papers, online papers, kind of fell for it. So honestly, as far as terrible overreactions go, this one is mildly justified, and we are explaining to you why with this episodic breakdown.
Yeah.
So the reaction to Donnie, that's the name of the pony, Donnie, to that is that of acting like a drama queen, and Buttercup says drama bomb, and immediately that sets the tone for the episode. This show is too comedic for its own good, which makes it unable to tackle anything seriously. And seriously, an episode about transgenderism should have a bit more of, what's the word I'm looking for? Tact!
Yeah, tact. Yeah.
Tact! Freaking tact!
Yeah, like the original episode was able to have like those like slow moments and all that, to have those serious moments where they're actually talking about the sort of issues that they tackle. Here it's just like, oh my god, you're transgender? Well, change yourself.
Trans unicorn, as it were. We're going by the allegoric representation here. Yeah. You know, my favorite moments from the original show were actually the slice of life moments, the bonding in between the girls and their fathers. They make for some of the best moments in the entire show. None of that here. None of that here. This, like I said, this is the last 2 seasons. This is like the last 2 seasons of the original run. It's just all nonsense comedy, and badly written too.
Yeah. And just like the Professor Utonian is just treated like the butt of jokes, with Bubbles just going into her hell mode, just screaming at him to get what she wants.
Yeah, that's the thing, is it? Does the guy Donnie chooses on his own volition to change species, as it were, or is it completely forced by Bubbles to do so because she would love nothing more than to be friends with a unicorn? Which, again, in the context of its supposed themes, that would be like the real-life equivalent, the cartoon equivalent to the real-life situation of a guy telling to another guy, yeah, you should totally go do that so I can tell my other friends that I am friends with a cool transgender type guy. That makes me cool. Which unfortunately that's something that happens in real life, and if this episode were to be a little bit more tactful and serious about its themes, it might have come off as Bubbles being completely in the wrong about it. As it were, everything is so utterly confusing and messy, nothing really is learned.
Yeah, it's mostly just like, oh my god, I treated you badly, Donnie. It's okay. I forgive you, Bubbles, and then they forgive him. That's it.
But wait, Buttercup, is it a failure or a cult? I still don't understand that.
It's like, shut up, Buttercup. We don't care.
Hey, is it a stallion? Oh, what's a stallion? Oh, it's a filly with a dick.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, that gets me. Okay, more than anything else that this episode botches, those dialogue exchanges just get me more than everything else.
It's just trying so hard with that joke, and it's just not a funny joke at all.
No, it makes you feel kind of stupid for watching a children's cartoon, which is something that most children's cartoons that I watch nowadays do not make me feel.
Yeah.
Take that for what you will.
It sort of connects back to what I forget who said it. It was either producer or something like that. Basically, it's like we're attaching these issues because we believe that children are smart enough to get them.
Hey, children! Hey, children! Do you know the difference between a cult and a feelie? We don't either. Let's be stupid together.
Yeah. Because I think that's the right frame of mind that most people who make cartoons should have. But it isn't like putting those words into actual action. It's basically just like we think about these sort of things, but not really. Yeah, that makes you smart.
I are smart. Okay, honestly, this is the moment in which you realize that none of the original writers and animators that work at this show are working on this new reboot, and all the people who are working on it are just not as good.
Yeah.
Well, either that or they are so micromanaged by Cartoon Network they don't have the liberty to actually do what they want to, which would surprise me. But
Yeah,
at the same time, Cartoon Network is giving complete carte blanche to show like Steven Universe and Adventure Time and We Bear Bears and all their better shows basically. So why not the PPG? No, because they had to fulfill some sort of quota. We had to balance out our good shows with our dumb shows. We cannot have all good shows.
Like, God, because then we won't be able to push our merchandise for those shows as much. Yeah, that could be one of their methods of doing it. Put out a mediocre show to make their good shows even better looking.
That seems counterproductive for a variety of reasons. Then again, Nickelodeon relies completely on SpongeBob, so who am I to judge their business strategies?
Yeah.
So anyway, moving on. So they bring Donnie to the professor, who has a round chin, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm only pointing that out because that's one of the idiotic things that Tumblr likes to point out and explode in fury. But honestly, it's such a minor detail that doesn't bother me in the slightest.
What are they mad about that for?
Because he has a chin. Because he doesn't look completely rectangular. That's one of the things that, it's iconic.
Oh my God, his chin. Oh my God, I'm totally upset now. He doesn't look exactly like the first show. Oh, that's terrible.
And they also complain about Mojo Jojo not talking redundantly. Even though the only episode he had an appearance so far, it was barely a cameo, and the episode was not about him, so really if you heard him actually talk redundantly, ironically, it would have been redundant and make the episode actually longer.
Yeah.
So that's such a moot complaint, but not this episode. This episode, all the complaints have been validated by Cartoon Network itself, and it's idiotic advertisement.
Yeah.
Oh joy. So like I said, they bring Donnie to the professor. And the professor, hey, I can change your sex, I mean your species, with my change species machine MacGuffin that I just invented. Because he's the professor, they got that right.
Yeah.
So
And then they basically just blast him with the ray, and he starts transforming to stuff. First with bunny ears, and then he gets a bunch of teeth, and then he starts to grow into a big monstrosity because he changed.
Except, again, in the context of the themes that this episode is going for, if you had an operation to change your sex, you are not yourself anymore. You turn into a monster.
That is kind of disgusting.
That is terrible. This is actually surprising. Not surprisingly, this is a recurring problem that I've seen even in good products. For example, the film Box Trolls by Studio Laika?
Yeah.
That is a pretty good film. Except for the villain of that film. You see, the message, the theme that film was going for is being yourself versus being what you are not. Which, the way it's tackled, makes the villain look in the wrong for cross-dressing. Because that's not who he really is.
I have to rewatch the movie because I never really got that sort of connection. I thought the cross-dressing was just to basically meet his ends. I don't know.
That's not what they intended, but that's how it came out. And Studio Laika is a studio that actually tries his hardest to produce good stories with important messages. But even they managed to flub that one slightly. So yes, it's actually a much more deeply ingrained problems in mass media and popular art than one might think of.
It's not exclusive to the Powerpuff Girls.
The way this episode goes seems to downright tell you that changing yourself is bad. You should always be what nature intended you to be, even if you're going to be miserable for the rest of your life. But that doesn't matter because of the ending. But we'll get there. Okay, so he's turned into a monster and he goes up and destroys the Pickles Museum. Because there has to be a pickle museum because the mayor is the mayor and he likes pickles.
Yeah. Probably the funnier jokes in there because I'm learning more about the mayor and his pickle obsession. Because I haven't seen like the original Powerpuff Girls in so long. It's just like, oh yes, he did like pickles that much. Freak.
You know, by the time the last 2 seasons of the original show came out, he was so flanderized to the point that he was the single most unlikable character in the entire show. He was literally just a crybaby that does nothing but whining.
Yeah.
So there's that risk here. So anyway, okay, this is something that Tumblr kind of went out of its way to just to point out, and they most likely did it out of spite at this point. You know when the giant phallic pickle gets destroyed?
Which phallic pickle? They're all pickles.
Well, and this is the such and such pickle, says the mayor.
Right. Oh yeah, right. The one gets destroyed, then bad luck will rain down on everything. Something like that.
And Tumblr is like, I wonder what does that mean?
What does it mean?
Well, I think that's a stretch, but you know, I can see why some would be upset with that imagery of the metaphor. Ideally, no. I was about to say the pickle is a metaphor for both the penis and therefore the status quo. More likely, the status quo gets shattered, which means bad things are going to happen.
I understood that. I'm more saying, like, that is such a huge stretch. Like, God, they are giving way too much credit to the freaking writer.
I know, but no, here's the thing. It's the opposite of that. The writers did not put any thought whatsoever in this. So, because of their carelessness, you had potential problematic imagery, such as the pickle shattering moment. Because it was the opposite of effort that caused this, which is kind of ironic. Anyway, that's a stretch either way, but, you know, at this point in time, we are basically eviscerating this episode from start to finish. We might as well do it right. Either go far or go home, right?
Yeah.
So... so there is a climax, I think.
So Donnie's getting all big and red. He's climbing the building like King Kong.
You should have never challenged the status quo, Donnie.
Yeah, and Bubbles goes up there. It's like, no, Donnie, I'm sorry, so sorry. Then she gets slapped. So
good, good, I say.
Yeah, it's all Bubbles' fault to begin with. She goes, "Oh my god, I want a special unicorn."
Actually, it's Bubbles and Buttercup's fault for outing the poor guy.
Well, they don't even talk about Buttercup that much, though. Basically, like it's all on Bubbles sort of thing. Buttercup is not in the wrong at all for outing anyone. That's what the episode says.
Yep.
That's funny. It's funny outing somebody.
Yeah, let's do that in real life, kids.
Yeah,
I'm
all
pretty
you
sure,
really get from is like a huge comedic like yelling from them.
you know, if Cartoon Network did not bother to advertise this episode the way they did, I'm pretty sure this episode would have been forgotten pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But as it stands, now that they did that, perhaps that was their intent all along, by the way, because every attention, every publicity is good publicity, as Vince McMahon says. Bad example.
Yeah.
But this episode would have been otherwise forgotten, and for all the right reasons, because it's a really freaking stupid episode, it's badly written, and it makes no sense in the ending, regardless of its connections with the LGBT themes.
Yeah.
And let's get to that ending, shall we? What the hell happens in the ending?
Unicorns pop out of nowhere, they float Donnie up, and they transform him back into a little unicorn, and reveal, like, just get the hair out off your horn, there you go! You were a unicorn the entire time. You stupid idiot. Yeah, that's the right reaction to have. Wow, you really closed the door. Well, I'm just gonna stand here until he comes back. Here he comes. Come on. Feeling better?
Let's dissect this finale, shall we? Okay, so the whole point of Donnie acting the way he was because he wanted to be a unicorn, which is something he was not.
Mm-hmm.
And the episode, either by laziness or maliciousness, goes out of its way to say that change is bad. You should never become the unicorn because that would challenge the status quo, and that brings you misery, and that turns you into a monster. And then unicorns, actual unicorns MacGuffin, including the guy's mother, come out of nowhere, save the day, and tell you, hey, guess what? You were a unicorn all along. You were just too dumb to notice it because your stupid hair was covering your minute horn.
Yeah.
So what is the message here? So it went from being transgendering and changing sex is wrong to, hey, transgender people, you don't need to change your sex. You are that gender all along.
Yeah.
Which makes no sense, and it has zero applications in real life.
Yeah, I really didn't understand it. Like, before I understood that it was about transgenderism, I did not understand what it was trying to go for.
What? And I still don't right now.
Like, if you took LGBT completely out of the equation of this episode, what is the moral of this episode? That change is bad? You were fine the way you were because you were always the thing that you were supposed to be?
So, making your entire plight of changing your gender or species, as it were, completely pointless. Making the entire episode completely pointless. Making the entire theming of this episode completely pointless. Making everyone wasting time. So, even if you take out the LGBT element, it makes no sense. And if you actually consider the LGBT element in this context, it also makes no sense because it completely contradicts itself at every turn and every moment of this episode.
Yeah, the only thing close to an actual like moral that you could actually follow is like maybe if you follow Bubbles' thing, like maybe you shouldn't change somebody just for your own means.
That's a good lesson! Couldn't we focus on that aspect of it? That would have made for a great episode in the old show.
Yeah, because Bubbles is just doing this whole thing. It's like, oh my god, I'm gonna prove everyone wrong, that unicorns are real.
So, does she learn anything at the end of it? Does she repent for her actions? Does she actually manage to realize what she had done? Or Buttercup, for that matter? Nope! Everything is funny because this is a comedy. Yeah, and you can't take an issue like that seriously if it's so comedic and not even funny.
Yeah. Yeah, all she does is just apologizes and then, oh my god, you were a unicorn the entire time. I was right, and thusly everything I did was validated.
But wait, is he a colt or a filly?
He's a freaking unicorn.
So is it both?
Yes.
You know, if you want to make this episode even more confusing than it already is, the unicorn horns is typically a phallic symbol. So this whole time was trying to get a penis instead of removing it. But it was already male.
Yeah, I guess. Oh my god.
Who's got the power? We've got the power.
We get the power to be stupid.
Well, and on that high note, I guess this is a good time to actually conclude this podcast, because I believe we said everything that needed to be said about this train wreck.
Yeah, of an episode.
You know, when G4 My Little Pony tackles transgender issues without even trying better than you do, not to knock down MLP up until this point, it's a good show for the most part, but still, the Hasbro toy commercial show has better written stories than the supposed reboot of the one show that defined an entire era for Cartoon Network's cartoons. I want you to think about that. I want you to think about how badly botched this episode was, and how much worse it can get if they try to tackle something else. Like, I don't know, let's talk about racial segregation. Let's talk about eugenics. That couldn't possibly go wrong.
Yeah. Like, I feel like cartoons could tackle, like, tougher topics, not eugenics, obviously.
Well,
they have to do it in a way that basically works on both sort of levels, like
actually
on a single moral level and then the actual thematic level that they want to tackle.
Actually, allow me to contradict you, because Zootopia, among other things, was about eugenics. So, you can't tackle everything.
Yeah, you just have to do it in those sort of different levels, like the base level, like where you actually get the same moral, like the whole Bubbles moral. That could have worked if you focused on that. Then we have the thematic of transgenderism and all that, and then you go into the layers of it. It has to make sense on that first layer, or nothing come together.
Yep, and nothing came together. It was all over the place. Okay, instead of going far to the finish line, it stopped in the middle of it and started to running around in circles and then in star-shaped segments and then all over the place up until he simply fell down of a precipice. A precipice of disaster, as it were.
Yeah.
So this was our opinionated discussion and deconstruction of the Powerpuff Girls episode Horn, Sweet Horn. Which, come to think of it, the title seems like it has a double entendre, but let's not go there.
Yeah, I don't even get what Home Sweet Home is supposed to be like referencing to. Like, he doesn't go home anywhere. He just gets a horn.
Horns can be sweet, apparently.
Yeah, very sweet. Right up the
So
face.
anyway, and on that classy note, this has been Madhog Thy Master.
This has been Y-Boy.
We'll be seeing you next time for whatever other botched shenanigans in current day cartoonery we happen to find. Current day cartoonery. I just said that. That is a sentence that came out of my mouth.
A very stupid sentence.
Well, still not as stupid as colts and fillies and stallions and mares and... Hey kids, do you want to see my penis? I'm going to cut that part. So, anyway, yeah, I am. I think I'm a bit tried, as it were, and my boy is as well, as you can tell. So we're going to stop this now. And yeah, oh, indeed. So goodbye, everybody, and remember, transgender people are people too. So don't treat them like Bubbles and her sisters did to Donnie. Okay?
Yeah.
Because chances are, if you treat somebody like that in real life, that somebody will punch you in the face.
You start transforming into a giant monster, you blast him with a laser.
You know, yeah, okay. Right. So
I ruined that serious moment. Just like Powerpuff Girls.
who's got the power? Not us. Not us. Bye!